So, for those of you who are listening to a recording, this is Tuesday, the 5th of December. Can't quite believe I'm saying that. The last call of 2017. It's 7 o'clock in the evening. And we have the wonderful Dr. Alain Gregoire joining us as guest speaker this evening. There are a few people who actually got in touch with me in the kind of line up to this, saying that they unfortunately couldn't attend the call. So I know that many people are looking to listen to this recording. For the sake of the recording and just for everybody on the call this evening, please do remember that if you are not speaking, to keep yourself muted so that there's no background noise interrupting the speakers who are taking their turn. For those of you on a computer or an iPad or a laptop,
yes,
mute yourself. It is the icon of a microphone. If it's green, you are not muted. If it is orange, you are. So when you're not speaking, if you could keep that orange, that would be wonderful. And then, of course, when you do want to say something, please do just simply click it to unmute. For those of you on a telephone, it's slightly different. It's star and the number 6 to mute, and star and the number 6 to unmute once again. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. As I say, this is our kind of Christmas special call, and actually a really exciting call because we've got quite a few new ambassadors joining us for the very first time. Those of you that have been on the call since 7 o'clock will have heard from Linda, also appearing as Peter this evening, and Linda is one of our new ambassadors, but actually I think we've got 7 in total who are joining us this evening for the very first time from all over the UK. So really a very exciting time for the campaign. For those of you on computers and laptops, as usual, we have a PowerPoint presentation, so do look at your screens. You should all be able to see that. If anybody can't see their screen and see the slideshow, please do let me know. In terms of what we want to get through today, we've tried to make it nice and light and fun because we appreciate that everybody's lives are probably relatively manic at the moment with the lead up to Christmas, fast approaching. So we have welcome and introductions. I'd love for those ambassadors who are joining us for the first time to take just a moment to introduce themselves, say who they are, where they're from, what area they're representing as a civil affairs ambassador, so that everybody knows.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah, I just wanted to say there's a lot of background noise, and I've unmuted just to tell you that.
Okay, thank
you. I'm just going back to mute.
Thank you. Is that a bit better? I think that's probably a little bit better now. I think we're good now. So as I say, quite a bit.
Yes, it's a lot better.
Okay, thank you, Anthea, for letting me know. We are going to have Dr. Alain Gregoire, but I would love for people just to take the opportunity to introduce themselves if this is their first time on the call. And for everybody else, I know there's been loads of really fantastic stuff happening over the last month since we last spoke in November's call. So I would really love to hear from some ambassadors on what they've been up to, sharing with everybody the activities that they've taken on. We then do have Alain joining us at 20 past. And then we're going to have a little discussion around our plans for 2018. Again, can't quite believe I'm saying that. But what we see ourselves doing going into the new year. A couple of key announcements, nothing too heavy. But again, just really trying to communicate with each other and open up conversations around what we're up to and what we hope to go into doing in the new year. These are our wonderful new ambassadors. So as I say, from all over the UK, really. We've got some down in the London area, a lady called Dawn up in Bury. I don't know if Dawn's yet on the call. We've got a new ambassador all the way from Orkney, one of the Orkney Islands, Florida, joining us, Cecilia. Linda, of course, in Glasgow. Isabel in Manchester. Alan, who will be representing both Perth and Glasgow. Jude in Staffordshire, and Coral in Gloucestershire. So, I would now really love to just open up the floor to those new ambassadors so they can introduce themselves.
Hi there, I'm Linda. Although it says Peter, that's because it's my husband's PC, so I'll have to change that when I come on the meeting. I've just joined 7030 campaign. But I registered way back in July and spoke with Sarah and kind of shelved it for a while because I had other commitments. And then basically in the last couple of weeks, I've stormed in and managed to get 70/30 campaign in Volunteer Edinburgh newsletter. I'm sure some of you have maybe read it. If not, I can make sure that everyone gets a copy of it. I'm an Equalities Ambassador for Equality and Rights Network, which is based in Edinburgh, and it's volunteer. So this was the perfect platform for me. All of my background is childcare. I'm a qualified nursery nurse, early years educator. I've worked with birth to 5 on and off for the last 40 years. So I have a lot of experience, but still learning on the job. But my passion is trying to eradicate maltreatment and child abuse. So I'm looking forward to Sarah moving to Edinburgh so that we can collate with each other and be a force to be reckoned with.
Great to have you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Peter.
Hello, Pete.
Who's that?
Who's that sexy voice talking?
That's Rob from Devon.
How you doing, Rob?
Hi,
very well,
Rob.
thank you. Hello.
Nice
Did I
to
hear-
hear all the accents.
Give it a what accent?
Pardon?
That's right. I'm a little bit deaf. Did I hear Sarah's moving to Edinburgh?
Oh, sorry, have I divulged something I shouldn't have?
No, not at all. I was actually going to let you all know at the end of the call, but I might as well do it now. I am moving to Edinburgh. I am moving to Edinburgh quite soon. I'm moving up before Christmas, actually, so very soon. So I'll be based there, meaning that our wonderful Glasgow group, Linda in Edinburgh, Alain in Perth, and our wonderful pair in Orkney will get lots of support and nurturing. But for the rest of you also, I will be continuing to do what I do. So no change there.
That's lovely, Sarah. Really exciting.
It is, thank you. Yes. We
Yeah.
bought a house just a few weeks back, so it's all go.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're trying to get in before Christmas, thinking it sounded awfully lovely, but it's been more stressful than lovely so far. We'll see.
Well done and good luck with the future, Sarah.
I'm going to have to break this to Noah.
If you haven't signed the petition to stop this, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Sorry, you're not having her.
Oh, bless you all. Listen, I think we're actually, I'm disappointed to say this, but I don't think any of our other new ambassadors are just on yet. So hopefully they join us before the end of the call and they can take the opportunity to also introduce themselves to you. But take a note of these names. They're all, I believe, on the closed Facebook group. So just make yourself known to them. You're a lovely lot. So just, reach out and offer them some support. Most of them, I'm really pleased to say, are joining what's already an existing group. In Glasgow, for example, we've gone from having nobody a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and we've now got 4 or 5 working together. So, most of them are coming into what's already a support group, but it would be really lovely for people just to reach out and say hello. Right, what have we been up to this month? As I say, I was preparing this call earlier today and looking at what people have been up to, and I am so pleased to say that I know almost all of you, if not all of you, have been up to such wonderful things, but I'd really love to hear it from you so that you can share with us what you've been up to and how you've been getting on.
Hi Sarah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kevin. Hello.
Hello. I'm actually sitting in the car just now and I've not got a great signal, so I'm thinking of actually making a rush for home, be home in about 15 minutes.
Right, okay.
But I can update you if that helps.
Yes, please do.
We had planned to have a showing of the film Resilience in the council chambers here. but it seems a few councillors have thought it's not appropriate, so it's been shelved, and we're now looking to have a public screening of Resilience at the same time as a Growing Up in Orkney conference on the 9th of February. So that's going to be quite positive. We're going to have it officially linked as a fringe event, and we'll have a discussion panel afterwards. I've also spoken to the chair and head of, or CEO of our Voluntary Action Orkney, and she sits on the Community Planning Partnership and Integrated Joint Board, and she's going to take information on the 70/30 campaign and the work towards trauma-informed services here to those two forums, and see if we can get the agenda a little bit stronger. So I'm quite pleased.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, beyond that, you also had your wonderful meeting with Alistair Carmichael a few weeks back. For those of you on a computer, you'll see a picture there of Kevin and Alistair together. And you then went on to have a press release published not long after that in the local paper. I believe a paper that goes out to everybody in Orkney and the Shetland area. So a really successful first month for you, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't feel as if I'd like to do more, but then I'm sure everyone does. So
That's great. Well done, Kevin.
thank you. Right, I'm going to shoot home, and I'll join you again as soon as I'm home and I've got a better internet connection. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Who else would like to share with us what they've been up to in the last month? I've got lots of examples on my screen, so I know it's been happening.
Sarah, the Mac, whatever Mac you're sharing the screen of, does it need plugging in?
I don't think so. What's it doing?
Okay. It says low battery. Your Mac will sleep
yeah.
soon unless plugged into power.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't see that. I'm saying I can't see it myself, so thank you.
That is a very
I thought
good
you might not be
spot.
able to see it. That's why I mentioned it. Otherwise, we'll just disappear the whole call.
What would I do without you, Amy? What would I do?
Probably exactly the same, I think.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Right, who else wants to share with us what they're up to? Amy, you're a wonderful person to share what you've been up to. I've got a picture of you on my screen right now.
I've not been up to anything. I think I'm the right person.
Lies! You had your meeting with that Goldsmith.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well that went, though, to be honest. We did have a meeting with Zach Goldsmith. Yeah, Daphne and I and Wendy. He seems to want kind of very specific information about the Pioneering Communities project, which we weren't really able to offer him at the meeting. So I'm not sure whether we've been following him up afterwards. And I think Wendy, because he's Wendy's MP, so she's been emailing him backwards and forwards, I think. So we're hoping we'll get an endorsement, but we'll see. He's yet to completely agree to endorse it at the moment. Unless that's changed recently.
What you might find, Amy, is that sometimes with MP, well, I mean, it's true in life, but particularly with MPs, you find that where you get the most resistance and the most sort of hesitance at the start, you can actually get people then, you know, ending up being some of the most powerful advocates because they're just like that, aren't they? And do you get where I'm?
Yeah, I think he wanted to be sure that he understood what he was endorsing, if that makes sense. And I think he possibly, you know, maybe we weren't prepared enough, but I think he maybe didn't quite understand. I mean, obviously he's endorsing the intention of reducing, you know, the 70/30 plan, but I think he wanted more firm details about exactly what it was that he was endorsing before he would say, yes, sign me up, kind of thing. And I think what for him, that meant understanding more about the pioneering communities, which we weren't really able to give him that level of detail that he wanted. So, but I think we've since sent him some more information. Wendy's been following him up, and she's been emailing him and given him a bit more information about it, I think. So I'm hoping that we might make some progress.
Well, I think it's great that he's got 70/30 in his head. That's the main thing.
Yeah,
been
yeah,
passed.
yeah.
Well done.
Hopefully,
Brilliant. Good.
to start at least.
Thank you, Amy.
Well, chaps, I'm going to introduce Dr. Gregoire, but not quite yet, because I don't believe he's yet joined the call. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. I don't believe he's yet joined the call. When he does, I'll introduce. But until then, please, keep sharing what else has been going on.
I got luckily invited to a meeting tomorrow, actually, with the Labour Party of the local area, because my main job is I deal with psychosocial therapy and drug and alcohol services, and I've been invited to go along to do this speech about what we're doing for young people in the communities. And yeah, I've somehow managed to speak to another lady who's keen to get me back, which is quite interesting because I've really struggled with MPs in my area, who's invited me back to speak to the local MP about 70/30. And I had that phone call on the way here on the train in between bridges, which is quite good. Yeah,
That's great.
totally. I seem to be able to talk to everybody else in the whole wide world. I had to kidnap Ben Bradshaw. I had to do all of the rest of them. MPs are very difficult.
So is this a party meeting? Is this like a local
party meeting? Yeah, so it's quite exciting. Yeah. So I'll be going with my 70/30 t-shirt and my 70/30 tattoo. And my pens and my balloons.
Irresistible.
I know how to party at the Labour Party. Yeah, looking forward to it. And then I've got this REACH thing, which is about adverse childhood effects, which is on Friday. And I'm giving a 30-minute presentation on 70/30 and what we're doing, and where we've been and where we're going.
That's really smashing.
Yeah.
All this stuff, by the way, guys, this kind of local stuff that's going on is so powerful on social media, particularly where your CCG decision makers and your bigwigs of various sorts, your MPs are seeing all this amazing stuff that's happening, conferences and screenings and meetings and people being cornered and trains and talked to about. It's all really amazing to stuff to share on social media, and I just encourage everyone to sort of engage on the kind of Twitter platform particularly as well.
It's Alex speaking. If I can just make a more general point as well, we've actually now received the endorsement of 60 members of Parliament, which, to put that into some context, we're only 5 MPs away for achieving a 10% 10% total of the House of Commons. So 5 more MPs and we've got 10%. So I think that's very encouraging when you consider that we started this from nothing almost 18 months ago.
I hear that, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah,
5
definitely.
more and we've got the 10%.
Yeah. And you've definitely been a main man with this, Alex. So,
oh, you're making me blush. You're making me blush.
You are a real warrior. Well done.
Is there a plan from the campaign's perspective in terms of what to do with those endorsements? What's the next step for the people? Is there like when we've got this many endorsements, we'll do this, or is it just get as many as we can?
Well, our initial plan was to get to 50 and then on the basis of that start an APPG. Obviously, a lot of the MPs who said that they are fans and they are supporters are only at this stage prepared to give it a name. So the trick is then to go through those 60 and go back to them and say, look, do you actually want to do something about this, or are you happy to just add your name? But we're starting to go through the name only ones and divide them between the name only and the more interested in actually moving it forward ones.
Okay.
Amy, if I can sort of, what's really encouraging is that we've been having meetings. The vast bulk of the MPs who've endorsed, we've actually either met personally, as in myself, or you guys have met, and we've identified a number of MPs who are really keen. Some Tories, some Labour. The Lib Dems seem very stretched because they've got everything to cover with a handful of MPs, but again, some support there. And as we grow at a pace, a group in Scotland, the same is absolutely true up there. We are finding people who are willing to really push the thing forward. So in the early part of next year, as George announced at a previous workshop, we intend to set up an all-party parliamentary group. And the purpose of this group will be twofold. It'll be in Parliament. It'll be actually technically of the MPs rather than of us, but we'll, we're going to drive this forward, and we're going to host it, and we're going to facilitate it with whatever we can. We want to get MPs working cross-party on bits of legislation where a difference can be made, and a good example will be the mental health bill, which is probably going to, if my eyes and ears in Portcullis House don't deceive me, is going to hit the floor sometime in late summer, early autumn 2018. Which it'd be just amazing to have a number of MPs, both in the opposition parties and in the government, who are really committed to making sure that bill looks as progressive as we all want it to look, and has that prevention in there, and has that understanding of the early years in there. The second tier of what we're planning to do is within each party, we want to be having kind of conversations, about, there's a real opportunity here to put this into party policy and to really drive this forward within the parties. So the answer is a lot on those two sort of prongs. And as I think I mentioned in a previous call, one of the really powerful things that I recommend everyone does is follow your MPs on, again, on Twitter's great, or on Facebook if they're Facebook active. Get them to follow you and tweet at them. Tweet at, I don't know, Theresa May MP, great that you said X, you should really support 70-30, blah, blah, blah. And the more we are engaging the 60 MPs and counting now, the more they're going to end up being committed supporters.
So
now we have a caller.
Oh, yeah, is that Alain?
Joining us.
Sarah.
Who's joining us?
It's Sarah.
Sarah, hi.
Hi, I'm on a train coming from Newcastle.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I was rather hoping you'd be Dr. Alain Gregoire, but I'm very glad that you're you. So,
charming that.
Great to have you with us, Sarah.
I'm on a train, so I might do lots of listening.
Oh, right. Well, please throw in whenever you're not in a tunnel.
Sam, can I just ask, the APPG that you're talking about setting up? I know you mentioned that on the last call. Is that in addition to the 2001 Critical Days APPG, or instead of, or why are we not continuing with the APPG that already existed?
Yeah, really good question, Amy. Really good question. The 1001 Days APPG, to which some of you will have actually come, is a very good and continuing APPG to which WAVE is joint secretariat, and which George is joint chair of. That tends to be an event where a lot of the utmost voices, including Dr. Gregoire, who I'll be introducing when he comes on, are really sharing the latest in the thinking and the latest in the learning that they've got. And it's an extremely valuable opportunity for, I think, a lot of professionals and academics to spread good thinking. What it hasn't done particularly in the past is attract a large audience of MPs. And what we seek to do is to have perhaps a smaller group, but a group that's very action oriented, and where 5, 6, 7, 8 MPs, and I could name names, are really committed. I mean, they're really sold on, let's change things, let's change the law. So it's going to be very much a driving change and policy change, APPG, rather than a spreading best practice and that sort of an APPG. Very different thing.
So is it going to be LinkedIn? Because I'm guessing, I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming that the professionals that are involved with the 1001 Critical Days APPG would probably want to be influencing policy.
Well, it'll be driven largely by the MPs, but what has worked very well with several APPGs is where they're almost run like a select committee, so that they may bring people in to give evidence and to give learning, but the whole structure is it's a totally different structure. It's designed to change the law. So you might, for example, get a couple of ministers in, or you might take evidence on a specific recommended change to a bill. Peter Kyle MP and Dr. Paul Williams MP are both very, very strong advocates and supporters in the Labour Party. Peter Kyle runs an APPG on Southern Rail. If any of you commute via Southern, then you know just how hard and unpleasant it is to get from A to B via Southern. He runs it like a select committee, and he gets real results like that. So it'll be very much action oriented. There'll be an opportunity, for example, to subdivide into conversations with Labour, with the Tories, with the Liberals, with the SNP, and to again bring people in with the direct intention of shaping policy and of driving policy, and of saying, look, there's a whole network of people out here from Orkney to Devon who are passionate, and you know, you're hearing them on Twitter, you're seeing community events, you're reading about them in the paper. How are we going to shape policy? What are we going to do in 2018? So that's it. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, you have. I guess I don't want to take any of Alain Gregoire's time, because it's much more valuable to listen to him. So if that's him just arrived, so maybe we should save this for another time.
I'm going to do an everyone's of equal value thing there. You know, I've got to. That's a really good question, Amy. I appreciate you asking it. Who's joined us?
It's me again. I'm on a train and I might lose signal. It's me again, Sarah.
Sarah.
I'm trying to be sort of like discreet on a train. I'm just listening.
Lovely to have you.
Well, I'm now introducing Sarah Kingham, who's going to talk to us. No, I'm joking.
So naughty, Sam.
Sam, I guess what I was going to say with the APPG, in terms of wanting to influence policy, I totally see where you're coming from. A small group is more powerful sometimes than a big group in that. I guess you would want to make sure that whatever policy influences you were wanting to put into place were very much informed by the 1001 Critical Days group, because I suspect they would be the experts.
Absolutely. And yet another good question.
You know, if they were going to, if you were looking for an opinion, say on a new bill or a new policy, you'd want to get their opinion so that you could then, I guess, champion that.
Oh, she's doing a runner right here. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Sarah, Sarah, if you could do the muting, thank you. Amy, that's a really good question. And so what we've actually done is we've already set that in motion. So I think the key thrust of Wave Trust has long been, we've, you know, for 20 years gaining an understanding of what it is that you can do on a strategic level at a local authority population to drive forward prevention and to get the things in place that need to be in place. What we've now done is we've actually had, I produced a checklist of the kind of key items, a draft proposal of what we think to be important. And we brought that actually to not only people who attend the 1001 Days APPG, but actually a very broad group of what we call early years champions, many of whom are within that same group. And Dr. Gregoire is actually one of them. And we have, you know, again, people with much better knowledge than I. And we've actually taken a lot of feedback. I spent some time last week and the week before compiling the comments and the feedback and the advice, and essentially asking exactly that question, Amy. What do you think of these ideas? What should you be adding to these ideas? How can we shape this into an agenda that looks like really good policy informed by really current science? So yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. So what we're going to be able to do is continue having these conversations. Yes, definitely engage with 1001. You know, we still chair that, co-chair it with the wonderful Tim Lawton MP, and pull in all of that knowledge, and also, frankly, pull in the learning and the knowledge and the experience of all you guys, because you're having conversations out in the community, out at the coalface, out in the, you know, the real world, so to speak, not in, you know, Westminster's palatial APPG rooms. And that's another way that we can feed in a real sort of, it's the wrong phrase, but added value for the MPs, if that makes sense. So that we're an asset to them, we're valuable in feeding into them, not only this very well-informed policy agenda, but frankly also, you know, also a lot of experience to kind of give that a bit of weight. Now, if you're wondering why I'm sort of, I'm not on camera, I'm just checking to see what's happening with our speaker, because I know he's a very busy man. If I hand over to Sarah in the next few moments, Sarah, if that's okay, what I'm going to do is essentially disappear off the call and see if I can get you all a speaker.
Of course.
So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sarah.
Okay, guys.
And I will take any further questions on that or further conversation. Again, really, you know, pick that up. Speak to you soon.
Guys, obviously Alan's found himself either very incredibly busy or against traffic or some other inconvenience, which meant that he's not able to join us at the time that we had agreed. So hopefully we get Alan on before the end of the call, fingers crossed. But in the meantime, I wonder whether it would be worth having a discussion around what we hope to be doing in the first few months of 2018, what we see ourselves doing and where we see ourselves taking the campaign. And I suppose I kind of see my relocation to Scotland as an opportunity to open up that discussion. I know I've had discussions with Linda and Martha, Emma and Alan around what we hope to do in Glasgow and in Edinburgh. I've also had discussions with a few other ambassadors down south around what they hope to be doing. The Reading Group, for example, I know had a meeting just on Saturday this weekend past. And that was really about planning what they wanted to set themselves out to do in the early months of 2018. So I know that there are ambassadors who have already given it some thought. I'm not expecting everybody to have given it that level of thought, but I would love to hear from those people what I can do. And I suppose if I can hear from people what they hope to be engaging with in terms of activities in the new year, I can then set myself to providing the stewardship around that and anything else that needs to be produced or prepared around it.
Hi Sarah, Linda here, but it says Peter. I think I already said to you that Nicola Sturgeon, who's the First Minister of Scotland, has already seen the screening of Resilience, the ACEs documentary, and it has been screened in loads and loads of venues in Scotland. It's become a movement. So lots of people who are in childcare, like myself, we're very aware of it, and it's been screening for over a year now via Dartmouth Films. So in January, February, I'm hoping to get Dr. Suzanne Zeedyke, who is American. She's but she lives in Scotland, and she is a fantastic champion with Connected Baby. That's her company. She's a lecturer at Dundee University. So we're hoping to get her on board to do talks with the Resilience film, and then obviously question and answers afterwards. And she has lots of very, very powerful people on board for the Resilience films. So Scotland definitely is beginning to understand the ACEs, and why the importance of prevention of child maltreatment. So I feel that Scotland, because we're small, we're certainly more aware, and I think we've had our fair share of ACEs in the past, and we're beginning to understand probably why we have certain how can I say it, we have certain conditions that sometimes Scotland gets the sick man of Europe, and then when we look back we find out that there's a lot of things that we've not addressed. So personally I think we're on the right track in Scotland, but we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, and
yeah, I think that's a really good comment, Peter, and I'm so excited by Kevin will relate to this. The level of conversation in Scotland is what's really encouraging. Now, look, I apologise. Just jumping in here. I have spoken to our wonderful speaker, who is going to be joining us shortly. Sarah, if you don't mind, I'm going to do the introduction. Does that?
Yes, please do.
Which involves me finding it, which there it is. So, chaps, it's actually a real privilege to have this guy joining our call. Dr. Alain Gregoire founded the Maternal Mental Health Alliance. He's a member of the NICE Guideline Development Group for Antenatal and Postnatal Mental Health. He's contributed a huge amount to the conversation, to the development of policy, to guidance, to clinical services, both in the UK and abroad. Anyone who's heard him speak in Parliament will know that he's not going to take no for an answer, and not going to take anything less than a real sea change in how we address this. And I'd also just say that he's really put an awful lot into ensuring that all women have access to care for their mental health, which is at least as good as the physical health care. Again, putting into that very important agenda. So absolutely wonderful to have him with us. I believe, have we got you? I think waiting for name Webb is our guest speaker. Dr. Gregoire, can you hear me? There'll be a bit of clicking going on there. I would say that because we've reached slightly later than we planned to, with an enormous amount of very good questions, we may have a shorter amount of time for questions at the end than we'd have liked. So I would just urge anybody who's got a question to, in the interests of letting everyone get their word in, just keep it to the point, keep it snappy, and see how we do.
Hi, Alan joined you.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us, and I will absolutely hand over to you.
Have you passed on my apologies, Sam? Or shall I say them now?
Dr.
Joining you late.
His apologies, they're not needed.
That's okay. It's lovely to have you.
Hi. So I'm just joining you by phone, but I don't know how you run this. Are some of you looking at each other and so on, or?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's right.
Computers.
Cool. So I apologise that I'm just doing audio. I hope that works all right for you.
That's fine. We can hear you really well.
Great. Good. So I thought I would just tell you a little bit about my perspective on the issues relating to 70/30 as a perinatal psychiatrist. And as some of you possibly know, I'm also obviously involved with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance and campaigning and those issues, but I didn't think I'd cover that too much. It's more kind of the mental health and parental and particularly maternal mental health aspects of things. But you can ask questions about any of those issues or other issues or campaigning or related issues or whatever you like. So I'll just launch in. Feel free to interrupt if you want to catch on a particular thing, but otherwise we can have a sort of discussion with everybody afterwards. So whichever way you feel you want to do it while you're listening, if you like. First thing to say from a mental health point of view and kind of the theme of what I want to try and convey is that childhood experiences and particularly adverse childhood experiences are absolutely critical to us working in mental health, because they are one of the most powerful predictors of mental health in childhood and in adulthood. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the whole concept of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and the impact that has on future well-being, on life, on outcomes in a very, very broad range of ways of measuring it: happiness, productivity, and physical and mental health, both in children and in adults. And that includes also when one thinks of, as again, I'm sure you're very aware, when one thinks of the scale of adverse childhood experiences that increase the risks of problems, of course, inevitably we are talking about an impact on society. And I think it is interesting and relevant when one thinks about that to understand a bit what the progression of adverse childhood experiences are on individuals, because that gives clues to many of the outcomes that are felt at a social level, both in terms of society's functioning, but if you want to be kind of very bottom line about it, even society's economy. Kind of starting at the beginning, what are, from the point of view of health outcomes, what are adverse childhood experiences? And as I've already said, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of ACEs. And I'm sure you're also very familiar with the kind of lay and popular and media focus on one particular area of adverse childhood experiences, which is abuse in the kind of narrower popular term, particularly sexual abuse and to some extent physical abuse. And other forms of adverse childhood experiences don't really get a look in the media because, I mean, and here I'll stray a bit into personal perspectives as well as kind of evidence, hard-nosed evidence base. But in my view, that's because we have a kind of social obsession with sex. And even more than that, the focus ends up being on celebrity perpetrators I think I'm sure that if you analyse, can everybody hear me, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. So if one focuses on what, oh, now there's suddenly a lot of background noise that I'm hearing. Is that just me hearing it? Or?
No, it's possibly me because I'm on a train.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm sorry, I am listening, and I'll try my best to prevent
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but can I add, just so that we can cut out that background noise, could you just press *6 to mute yourself?
Oh, what?
Star, and then the 6 button.
Yes.
Oh, that's clever.
Perfect.
But that means you can't say anything now. So if the noise starts, we'll know you're coming in with a question or a comment. The focus, I think, in the media has been on sexual abuse because our kind of we're kind of attracted to the smuttiness of sex, even in the Daily Telegraph. In addition, the focus is very often on perpetrators and celebrity perpetrators. And I have been watching out over years for any description or allusion in the press and the popular media to what happens, what the outcomes are, what happens to the victims or the people who are subject to abuse, be it whatever form of abuse or maltreatment or neglect. And there is nothing there. You never hear. So although we think we are aware and educated about abuse, trauma, neglect, adverse childhood experiences, actually, as a society, we're woefully ignorant, in my view. And we're even woefully ignorant about what actually constitutes adverse childhood experiences. So if you take an evidence-based view of what are the early experiences that lead to a higher rate of bad outcomes, what you discover is it's far, far broader than that popular concept of sexual and physical abusive circumstances. And actually, the whole wide range of adverse childhood experiences boil down conceptually to adverse emotional experiences. And adverse emotional experiences that the individual can't escape from and has no control over. And the most emotionally charged and damaging ones are obviously those that relate to the most significant relationships, not surprisingly. And this is what traumatizes the developing mind, because the developing individual evolutionarily is totally dependent on those relationships for the survival of the individual. So we depend as young children and babies on the adults who care for us, who feed us, who nurture us for literally our survival. And so it's not surprising that evolution makes a very big deal of anything that might threaten that survival. And of course, fire it.
Just going to ask quickly, Alan. Obviously, it's not always, obviously there are adverse experiences, but what I wondered about was when for each child would it become adverse? You've kind of explained it in the sense of the emotional impact, but obviously some children may deal with it better than others.
And seem to survive without adverse effects from those, broadly speaking, adverse experiences. Well, I think part of the answer lies in understanding that it's the emotional content that does the damage. So, for example, to take very extreme examples, a 12-year-old girl could be subject to a gynecological examination from a very sensitive gynecologist who could introduce vaginally an instrument to do an examination in a very sensitive way with a supportive parent nearby, and it never cause any sort of trauma and probably not even increase the risk of that child being damaged. But a father doing physically exactly the same thing but with his penis, could do untold damage and certainly increases the risk of adverse outcomes for that child. And yet the physical intrusion is essentially exactly the same. It's the relationship damage that causes the damage. Does that extreme example make sense? I suppose another example might be, a 5-year-old can have a branch land on his head from a tree in the wind, and it hurt a lot, but not cause long-term adversity in his life or increase his risk of poor long-term outcomes. But if his father randomly belts him over the head with exactly the same force as the branch, creating the same amount of physical pain, that could lead to increased risk of adverse outcomes. So again, it's the emotional relationship content that has an impact. And then in addition to that, I suppose there are almost certainly other factors that we don't understand that well. It seems pretty clear that how long and how repeated and how trapped the individuals are in those adversities increase or has an impact on the level of risk, which is kind of self-evident because the threat is clearly greater to that individual. And then there are probably other factors that we don't understand, including possible genetic ones. And it seems, so if you take severe emotional adversity, about a third of people will develop later symptoms of PTSD. Oh, is that Sam coming in with a question? I've got a lot of background interference coming in. Hello?
Hello, we can still hear you.
You could hear me. Okay, I'll carry on. It seems that in the order of about a third, if you look across research in this area, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in. I've had a question shared we've got a little chat here, and I've got another question shared for you from D. Cretney. So the question is the perception of trauma not about the helplessness in the moment and the influence of this on adverse outcomes?
Thank you.
Yes, so absolutely.
Sorry, that's from
yeah, that's an excellent point and question. Yeah, it absolutely, there is a relationship with helplessness is one way of describing it, or lack of control over the situation and inability to escape from the situation. So a very good example of that is the relatively recent appreciation of the traumatic impact of bullying at school. So this was never really taken very seriously until quite recently, when outcome studies of bullying at school has shown very clearly that this is an important adverse childhood experience with long-term consequences that are very similar to the impact of home adverse emotional experiences and abuse and neglect by parents. And probably the most significant factor in bullying at school is that you are repeatedly sent into this situation and you have to attend. And the people who you should be able to trust to protect you from adversity, like your parents, like adults and teachers, are the very people who are obliging you to be exposed to repetition of these traumatic experiences. So yes, helplessness, inability to escape, lack of control, I think all overlapping concepts that play an important role in this. And we can also see parallels in soldiers in war situations. So soldiers are more likely to develop PTSD, and maybe we can come back to that, if they've been traumatized in childhood, so that in a way primes them, but B, if they are in a very scary, dangerous situation that they're unable to escape from. So absolutely, yeah, very good point. So I think it helps a bit in understanding what constitutes trauma in that broader sense, or adverse emotional experiences. And it also, in my clinical experience, is extremely helpful in explaining to people how early childhood adversity may have led to them developing a certain very typical pattern of mental health difficulties. And those very typical patterns are worth understanding and being able to spot, because they are all around us. And to some degree or other, we probably all have a little bit of those. So in themselves, each of these features has a range from normal to really troublesome, or common to really troublesome. But it's when you have several of them that it starts to become very disabling. And that list of features, or as psychiatrists like me like to call them symptoms, if you use a medical model, but remembering that they're not either there or not there, they're on a continuum. That list includes very typically instability or rapid changeability is probably a better description, in mood and in thinking and in behavior. So people who chop and change very quickly in those aspects of their mental functioning. So they go from one moment very cheerful or happy or even ecstatic to extremely glum or very angry very suddenly. And it only takes one tiny little spark to change that. Rapid changes of thinking might be, for example, people who suddenly with one event go off their best friend forever. I'm never talking to them again. That's that. They didn't turn up and meet me at the cinema like they said they would. I'm never going to trust them again. And I'm never going to speak to them again. Very, very typical. Sudden impulsive behaviors. So, for example, accompanying sudden anger, just going totally over the top. Or marching out of housing department offices just because they didn't get the flat they want, and screaming and shouting and slamming the door. So it sounds quite adolescent, and in a way, it often is described as kind of immature or adolescent, but very typical of people who've suffered early childhood experiences or traumas. And it's very, in a way, I think, very understandable how that develops, and useful to understand how that develops. If you haven't been held and nurtured through difficult times, and actually you've had more difficult times added to, you're never quite sure what's around the corner. So the slightest little trigger, particularly triggers, of course, that are associated with the traumatic experiences you had, can spark off an enormous reaction inside you.
Can I just jump in there, Alain?
Sorry?
Hello,
yep.
Hello there. Can I just quickly jump in? Because I think we're going to run out of time, and I'm really brilliant conversation, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. My name's Anthony.
Hi.
And hello there. I deliver parenting programs in Kent, and I'm particularly interested, and one of my remits that's just been presented to me is to try and improve father involvement within parents and so forth. Where do fathers and men fit inside of the ACEs, and also in your capacity as a psychiatrist? Do we cause more trouble than has been let on, as far as supporting during birth, after birth, and also being exposed to ACEs and how we don't deal with it effectively? I'm particularly interested in men and fatherhood. Can you?
Yep. So when you say do we cause more trouble, do you mean do fathers cause more trouble, or do we in supporting fathers?
I think it's men in general. I'm thinking there's many different strands that I can come from. Whereas,
yeah, I mean, I think, I think men are the cause of a lot of traumas and troubles. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean they have to be. I think that's just the way in which society has treated men and the experiences that men have had in their own childhoods and the way in which they tend to react. So this rapid changeability in mood, men typically are more likely to show mood disturbance in the form of anger, whereas women seem more predisposed to showing mood disturbances in terms of anxiety and low mood. And I don't think anybody has quite got to the bottom of what that's about. But I think anger is a particularly destructive mood state, and men tend to be quite physical and get quite violent. So anger plus angry and physical behavior can cause quite a lot of harm in relationships. And that then perpetuates from one generation to the next. So, yeah, you know, men are a problem, but men are also potentially one of the big solutions, because that's where a lot of the difficulties lie. If we can engage men in healthier, more nurturing relationships, and particularly engage them with their babies and children, which we make, frankly, as a society, almost no attempt to do at all. I think we could make huge changes.
Could you steer me on to any resources that I could start this process to try and piece together a project to present to the council, which will stitch on to the WAVE conversation, so it kind of marries in with what I do, but also completely complements WAVE. Do you have any resources?
Yeah, there have been a few projects here and there. I have to say there been nothing I could point you to that I know of that's made a kind of enormous breakthrough. And most of the work that I'm particularly closely aware of, because that's what I work in, has been around mothers, interventions for mums. But there are certainly parenting interventions that do seem to show an impact. And what I can do is I can dig out some information and send it through Sam. So I'm happy to do that. And certainly, you know, I think we should focus more on men. I think absolutely an important, valuable thing to do. But probably even more valuable is with couples. So yes, by all means, men need tailored engagement that draws them in. But I think that the most profitable is probably to work with couples, with men, with parents together. And of course, working at a very early stage in pregnancy is the time to be doing it, because they're in contact with services.
Can I make a quick observation?
Yeah.
I'm just listening, and I mean, although in principle, I kind of agree with what Anthony's saying. I think if we take it into a gender discussion, we lose that actually we're talking about behaviour, and it's the behaviour of caregivers that cause the adversity. And I think we need to work around relationships and about improving our ability to be in tune with the emotion. You've already highlighted, Alan, it's the emotional damage. If we're in touch with the emotions, which traditionally possibly men have been less good at, but it's about addressing it from a behaviour perspective rather than a gender perspective. And I'm interested in Dad's work too.
Well, I would agree with that. I think, you know, I think working with couples that's going to yield the best outcomes, where there are couples, of course, and you know that goes without saying. Lots of parents are on their own, and that is largely mums. But I think more than behaviour, because behaviour, you can change behaviour, but you need to look at the whole mental aspect of both of behaviour, thinking, patterns of thinking, and patterns of emotions. And I think helping the most vulnerable, who are parents who themselves have suffered early childhood adversity, they are the absolutely key target group if you're looking at breaking transgenerational cycles. Is going to be the most valuable, and helping them to understand how their trauma not revisiting their trauma, because there's lots of evidence that doing that just traumatizes people, but helping them to understand how the way they are now and the way they are now as parents flows from their own experiences. So their changeability in mood, their inability to trust people. So that's a key characteristic of people who've been traumatized and people who re-traumatize as parents, is that they can't trust other people. And therefore they're on their own, because they won't let other people either help them or support them. And that makes the problems even more difficult for them and their children.
Great point, Alan.
Can I add something?
Alan, I'm really grateful for that. This is clearly such an engaging conversation for everyone. I'm conscious of time, so
I'm really sorry.
Can I add something?
Just 1 second, Antonella. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to. I know that Antonella has a comment to make. After that, if anyone wants to jump in with a last burning question, then who am I to stand in your way? And after that, I'll wrap up the call. And Dr. Gregoire, if you'd like to make a few closing comments after that, that'd be fantastic. But Antonella, I think you had something to.
Yes, yes. There are two aspects which, Alan, you mentioned probably briefly, but I would like to highlight a little bit more. The new studies on trauma are very much oriented towards the embodiment of trauma and the disconnection of this patient from bodily feelings, which I think is a very, very important aspect, because these patients disconnect from their bodily feelings in order not to re-experience the pain which caused the trauma. And this disconnection reflects also on their intimate relationships and relationships with others, which actually makes their life really a misery. And the perpetuation and epigenetic, the intergenerational transmission of this emotional disconnection to their children. I mean, they've done studies on soldiers, completely detached emotionally from their children, their wives, which obviously causes inevitably the failure of the marriage and the desperation and misery of the lives of these poor patients. And actually, it's not just about understanding their problem, but it's about engaging the body. I don't know, I'm sure you know Van der Kolk, who revolutionized the treatment of trauma. So it's so important that these patients reconnect to their trauma experience, not just by talking, you know, telling the story, but re-experience it physically. And they use mindfulness, which is actually my focus of research. I'm doing a PhD actually on this, on the relationship between maternal mental health and childbirth and infant development outcomes, because this mindfulness, which allows, actually really helps in therapy, because it allows these patients, not all, because it can be quite challenging for some of them, to reconnect with their bodily feelings. And it's such an important thing for recovery. But I mean, you mentioned briefly, but I just wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
So important in terms of epigenetic effects of the trauma.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the comment, Antonella.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody.
Can I just add momentarily to that? So the most significant disconnection is with their emotions, in that dissociation, as it's called, is a key feature of PTSD and so-called complex PTSD, which is what you get from childhood traumas. So they're detached, and detached from relationships, detached from emotions, because they learned as a child to shut off. If you can't escape, then you shut off mentally. And the relationship with their bodies is a very interesting one, because actually a key symptom as well is that they tend to somatize. So they have much more physical pains and troubles, so-called medically unexplained symptoms, which they present to the health service with. So 50% of people in cardiology clinics do not have cardiac chest pain, What they have is chest pains that are so-called medically unexplained, but that relate to about 80 to 90% of those people have had traumatic childhood experiences. And they don't have a heart problem, but they have a lot of pain. So it's very interesting. But in terms of therapy work, you're absolutely right. Van der Kolk and many others now are showing very clearly that you need a mix of physical interventions like exercise, drama, rock climbing, whatever, mixed with a sort of mindfulness intervention. And you need both so that you integrate mind and body, as we do with babies. We nurture them by soothing them physically and mentally. Absolutely. And you need to just restart that process with adults. Sorry, I went on, but you're right. This is really exciting field as well. We're learning so much so quickly at the moment.
Alain, I'm really sorry, and I'm reticent to open a can of worms right at the end of the call. I feel I have to ask you while we've got you. I'm very keen to hear your thoughts. I'm a health visitor. My name's Amy, and I'm just wondering what your view is on screening for ACEs, because there was a lot of talk about it at the conference, the Maternal Mental Health Alliance conference early this year, which was brilliant. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. And I'm just wondering, in practice, how you feel that can be done without endangering, kind of re-traumatizing people, and while making sure we're pulling out traumas which maybe wouldn't be on the list but might tick some of the emotional boxes that you were talking about earlier. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it's the future of good healthcare. I think we absolutely have to do it, but I think our skills as professionals for doing this well are very poor. Most of us have had no training in how to do this, but I have no doubt at all that the people we are trying to help are screaming out to have this acknowledged. Now, I said delving into it and getting people to redescribe their traumas, there's quite a lot of evidence that does re-traumatizing, that re-traumatizes them. Acknowledging that they had traumas and that this has an impact on them is just telling them something they know, but nobody else has ever acknowledged. And doing this work day in, day out clinically has taught me that 80, 90% of the people I talk to are more sophisticated than me or most of my colleagues in this. They really understand. They just need help to let it take shape a bit and to see through the fog and the muddle. Incidentally, there's a lovely website called Out of the Fog or Out of the Storm? But anyway, it's an American website that used to be about so-called personality disorder, and they've now changed it, changed the model to complex PTSD. And that's worth looking at. Because it really is a storm and a fog.
So is your feeling then that if you were to do, I mean, obviously, everything that you said about
with understanding, we should screen.
But with appropriate training, that would need to take place first. So that's the first step, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, most people otherwise wouldn't know why they're asking these questions.
Well, or I think the fear is, because I think quite a lot of health professionals, certainly, in the health visiting community, are starting to get much more aware of trauma and the effects of trauma and the importance of it and that side of things, and certainly are very familiar in terms of talking about trauma with parents that come to us saying, this happened and I need to talk to somebody about it. In terms of screening for it on a universal level, perhaps before you've got that therapeutic relationship in place, I think that is maybe the bit that people feel less confident with, and do worry about re-traumatizing. So I guess if you were asking from a screening perspective and not asking someone to relive, but maybe asking how many of these ACEs have you experienced any, from a more shallow level.
And you have a pathway for then helping people to make sense of it, or inquiring further as to what it all signifies in their lives. I mean, without that, without the training, without a pathway, complete waste of time. But then, we know we have to redesign the health service. It's just we don't have to redesign it by selling it all to Virgin Care. have to redesign it by doing prevention and good public health, compassionate care. But nobody's quite understood that yet.
Yes.
But we'll get there.
Amy, that is a really, really fantastic question, because I was going to say what we need is a holistic look at why we have ACEs. And if we look at our health visitors, our midwives, before a child is even conceived, we have to try, and because once the child's conceived, they need help, mums and dads, to understand the impact of the pregnancy. And a lot of people think because a child isn't born that they don't have feelings, or the brain doesn't. So we need to start from before conception, during pregnancy, birth, and after birth. And you know, 70 to 30 campaign, not to 2, is absolutely perfect for what we want to try and eradicate.
Alan, sorry.
Well, just before, Amy, I think because I know that I'm really sorry, but this is such a great conversation. But I'm in danger of telling Alan a call that ends at 8 o'clock and it's 8:20. So I think it's really, in fairness to our speaker and you guys as well, I'm probably going to have to call it a close now.
Look, I'm very happy to come back.
Oh yes, please, Alan.
and have another session if that's of
Can I ask a very quick question?
That'd be so valuable. We'd love to have you back.
Yes, please.
I'd be delighted.
That's really, really kind, Alan. Alex, I know you have a question. I think a lot of people do. I'm gonna close it there, because as I say, I think Dr. Gregoire will probably go and have dinner and all the rest of it. Come back. We'll have you every month.
No, that would be great. And I always
you're going to regret from offering.
I always learn so much from these conversations as well. So you know, we're all on a trajectory together. So that's fantastic. And I'd be very happy to. So Sam, just you know, liaise with me and we'll fix up another opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Very, very kind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
See everybody soon. I'm going to have to go to get bedtime organised. Bye.
Me too. I've got to go, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
All right, guys. For those who aren't jumping off,
I'm still here.
I realise they're not. I'm sorry to Alex and to anyone else who had a question there. It's just he's such a great guy and such a great speaker. There are a few bits and pieces that I had hoped to cover. Alex has very helpfully already mentioned the 60 MP endorsement, so I don't need to talk about that. Very, very excited that we can take all this incredible depth of knowledge and learning and push that into the policy debate and really create change. And, you know, changing people's lives is what we're aiming for in 2018. We also have, I'm very excited to say, this growth in Scotland. Now, in the Scottish Parliament, we have cross-party groups instead of APPGs. And WAVE is very interested in the 70-30 campaign. We're very interested in setting up a similar group in the Scottish Parliament. If we can get the support and the engagement of MSPs, it would be absolutely wonderful if we can create a group for the prevention of ACEs in Scotland.
Well, I think we've got the ground, Sam, and I'm sure that we will be able to do it.
I do not doubt you guys. It's really exciting. Scotland is just it's ahead of England, as you guys will know, and with the likes of you guys up there, it's just amazing to think of what we could do. My personal suspicion is it will be Scotland that drives this rather than Westminster.
Because we're small, we're small enough to be able to come together, because obviously, you know, we're only 10% population of the whole of England, so it is easier to manage, and we really are championing the resilience. It's beginning to filter down, and I'm sure in the new year we'll have lots of exciting things
a small nation doing good things.
This was really brilliant.
I'm really looking forward to it. Guys, I'm also going to just quickly announce that Becca Moore is holding her 3rd annual Birth Trauma Conference on Friday the 5th of January. In the diaries, please. Friday the 5th of January. Full day, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's Mile End Hospital in East London. There will be more on that, but you can book now via rebecca.moore2@nhs.net. We have another turn. I'm really trying to dash through this because I know you guys don't want to go. Sarah has already announced that she's relocating. Despite our best efforts, we're very upset about it, and I don't know what to say really other than lucky Scotland. We have two new infographics out on FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. If you haven't seen them, they're on the website. Do check them out. They're very, very well done. They're a collaboration with the FASD Trust, and I think they're an invaluable resource. I think that's it, guys. I have one final thing to say, which is that our next national call, we generally speaking have these, as you know, on the first Tuesday of the month. Now, in January that would fall on the 2nd, and it's entirely possible that one or two of us might go out for the count on the 2nd. Now, I'd love to get you. I'm not going to do it on this call because we've overrun substantially. But what I'm going to do is send around a poll. We'll have to get your thoughts on the best week in January to do our call. And you may all surprise me and say, let's do it on the 2nd, but if not, we'll arrange that.
Oh,
So
sorry, Sam, for bank holiday in Scotland.
Bank holiday in Scotland on the
2nd.
Yeah, I think probably we'll rearrange that. We'll send around the poll.
Come on, Sarah, where's your commitment?
I didn't know that. What a brilliant end to this call.
All right.
Bye, guys. Cheers to that.
I'm going to jump ship now, folks. I'm going to bid you farewell.
Bye. Nice to see you, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye,
everybody.
Have a great night.
Speak to you in the
Have a good day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay. Over now.